Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole, Monday, January 13th. And hope you all had a wonderful Christmas and great New Year's, and we're looking forward to a wonderful 2025. So before we get started, Crystal, you've got an announcement.
Yeah, just got a busy month with youth sports in the valley. So at DVSS, there's a home tournament for Junior B boys and girls basketball, and then on the 25th is the Junior A boys basketball. So yeah, if you're looking for something to do, come on, cheer your local youth in their sports.
Wonderful. And I would just like to put a shout out to Public Works. I understand that we had a situation at the airport where AHS was trying to fly in, and it was around Christmas, and they needed the runway cleared, and one of your team went out and got on unusual hours to clear the runway, allow AHS to fly in. And I just want to send a shout out to Patrick and Catherine Bonneville because they helped work this through with AHS. And because of all the lighting and all the work that's been done up there, we've helped some local people. So great job, Jared. Please share that with your team. All right. Can I get a motion to accept or any additions to the agenda, please? No, can I get a motion, Tom?
Yeah, I move that council adopt the agenda for the January 13th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented.
Seconder, please. Patrick, all in favor? Carried. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes of December 9th, please? Tony?
I move that council approve the minutes for the December 9, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented.
Seconder, please. Crystal, comments? All in favor? Carried. All right, we shall move on to 8.1.1, please. Mitchell?
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. My name is Mitchell Visser. I'm the Manager of Legislative Services. And with me is Angela, who's the Legislative Services Coordinator. We are bringing to you a briefing note regarding a remuneration and expense allowance for Mayor and Council. So this is a follow-up from the final report done by the Council Remuneration Task Force on December 9th, I believe, 2024. So we took the recommendations from the task force, and now we've consolidated these into a policy for your review. And with that, I'll pass it over to Angela, who'll go through the details of the policy.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. For the listening public, the Council Remuneration Task Force was established as per the bylaw passed in 2024. Every third year of a 4-year term, there will be a task force established to review all remuneration for mayor and council and all expenses. The remuneration is essentially how council is compensated for those who are not familiar with that process. And the task force in their final report had several recommendations, most of which have been captured in this policy. But all of the recommendations, the spirit of all of them have been captured within this policy. The other thing, as they were reviewing the documents, they reviewed several municipalities that fall within the same municipality index, plus or minus 10 points as Drumheller. So that's things that can be measured, such as property taxes, um, debt load, and budgetary considerations. In reviewing all of that, they found some things in other municipalities that would be considered a best practice that are not present in our current policy. So those were entered for consideration. The other thing in reading the policies that we still have in place, policy C-06-22, which is the current remuneration and expense allowance for mayor and council. Policy C-2-00, the conference attendance policy, and policy C-06-04, travel expenses. These policies are outdated, especially the last two that I mentioned. Within the policies, there are inconsistencies in, for example, in per diems allowed for meals and other things. One was passed in the year 2000 and one was passed in 2004. So the other thing in those policies that was difficult is that it referred to expenses allowable for town employees, which are captured in our internal human resources policies and shouldn't be in this council policy. With that, administration recommends to repeal all three of those policies, but capture the intent of all of them in one cohesive policy, which is what we have done here. Some of I'll just kind of go through the recommendations as they have been captured within the policy. The first one is that the Council Remuneration Task Force, or CRTF, as I will call them from now on so that I don't have a mouthful of words, they recommended a 4% increase in base honorarium for mayor and council effective January 1st, 2025. They did recognize that they understood that all of their recommendations were to be effective for January 1st, 2026. The research was to inform and make recommendations for remuneration and expense allowances for the next council term, not the current council term. However, they felt very strongly upon reviewing the 3 or 4 page list of projects that this council and some who are on the previous term have accomplished and are working on that will be complete by the end of term. They felt in conjunction with a review of the other municipalities and also in reviewing the document published by Alberta Municipalities, the 2024 Wage and Compensation Survey, which captured information from municipalities in large towns with a population of 5,000 and up, that the current council remuneration is the council, the average for mayors, what we have current is approximately 8% below the average, and what we have for councillors is approximately 6.5% below the average for other municipalities of our size. And they felt very strongly that the increase should take effect as of January 1st of this year, and that all subsequent increases would remain as what was previously done, which is an average of the two union negotiated increases between the local CUPE locals 135 and 4604. The other item that came to attention are per diems. Currently the per diem allowance is $260 per day for conferences and meetings. They have increased that to $280, but they have also recommended an increase. The policy recommends another per diem, which is $50 per meeting for board and committee meetings. Currently, there really isn't a way to compensate mayor and council for the time they spend at meetings, which is quite extensive in many cases. This also, yeah, really that was the intent behind it, is when they were doing the research and I provided them with types of meetings, number of meetings, and all of that, they felt that rather than having the full day per diem of $260 apply, that $50 standard per meeting would still compensate council but not take away from the full day per diems that would be used for conferences and government meetings and the like.
And sorry, just to step in here, just to add to that. So most of the recommendations from the CRTF we have included within our policy. One of the small areas that we differ from the recommendations by the CRTF is in per diem. So there is actually a recommendation that there be three layers of per diem. So one for conferences and government meetings, one for meetings and boards, or meetings for boards and committee meetings, and then finally one for training. So specifically for any courses that were taken by mayor and council to encourage training and education amongst council. So we felt that that was difficult to implement. It was a difficult concept to implement in determining what a training module was and how to reimburse for that and how to make that fair. So we want to take the spirit of that. So we, instead of giving a per diem allowance for every training module that a counselor would complete, what we've done is separated out our professional development for each counselor into their own allowance. That way, uh, that individual counselor can use that training allowance budget at their discretion, if approved by by the mayor. So we want to keep that aspect in the spirit of it, but we want to make it a little easier to administer. Recognizing that, we also increased the amount per meeting and board, any kind of meeting for board or committee, from I think 25 to 50 to accommodate that decrease
Yes.
in the amount of the per diem. So that's as I was saying, the majority of the other recommendations have been added to this policy document, and one of the few differences is in that per diems amount. So
The other piece of that came out in the final report was the recommendation of an attached schedule that would outline what is claimable. Some are on a per diem basis and some are with receipt. And we included with the attachments with the policy the schedule that does outline. By using this schedule, the policy itself will likely be current for some time, but council would only have to, maybe future council remuneration task forces would only really need to review the actual schedule to make sure that's still in line with what would be current in the research. The other change is that some of the items in the schedule refer to the provincial travel expense policy. That also allows us to remain current without having to revise annually any increase in travel per diem, such as meals and mileage. And we have also, at the recommendation of the task force, stated that the per diem is the only option to be reimbursed for meals or mileage. That reduces the administrative burden considerably and reduces the need to submit receipts. In the past, there have been times where receipts go missing, and then that's just an increase administratively to figure out those processes. The some of the new things that are captured in this policy. One is a childcare allowance. It's up to $1,000 annually that has been proposed for reasonable childcare expenses, used when mayor and council are conducting official duties. There's also a non-receivable option for $10 an hour, and that would be for example, a babysitter. If you have a babysitter for something, the submitted actual receipts would be for a registered day home or daycare. We have included the access to the wellness spending account, which is already provided to Town of Drumheller employees. It was the opinion of the CRTF, and also in response to questionnaire that was presented to mayor and council, that this would be well received to be able to access some of those benefits because the Town of Drumheller does ensure that their employees are looked after in this way. The final one other thing that we have included is to ensure that there is a per diem tracking and quarterly report provided to mayor and council, so that it serves two purposes. It is an informational document to see what type of work each member is having to do in their role. It also allows for perhaps one counselor is coming close to using their per diems because they, in that council year, had to attend more training for whatever reason, but perhaps another member of council hasn't needed to. It would allow for council to, in an open session of council, make a resolution to allow another counselor to use unused per diems, so that we still stay within the budget, but that mayor and council can attend the conferences that they need to for their role and the boards and committees that they represent.
Just moving on to the financial impact before we move to questions. I just wanted to highlight, so the overall impact to the budget represents an increase from around 126,000 to 135,000, or about $9,000 around, and also a 7% increase in the overall budget for council remuneration. However, we'd like to point out that a lot of these increases are so to per diems or to childcare allowances or things of that nature, which are not likely to be claimed to their full allowable expense. The majority of the increases are again for those accommodations, I guess. So those allowances or accommodations to again with childcare to allow council, somebody who might face barriers to joining council because of childcare, to actually claim that amount. But we don't think every single councillor is going to claim those amounts. So we're likely going to see a budget impact that's much lower than the one that we're seeing here today. And again, the 4% increase is a recommendation by the CRTF, but it really represents actually, so the proposed increase would be a 2.875% increase, which is the average of the two unions increase. So that increase of 4% is not as high as it appears. It represents about a $415 increase per counselor on average. So it's actually a small amount, but it's something that's there because we want to. The CRTF was passionate about reimbursing council for the work that they do in some small way. So, and with that, I think if there's nothing else, we'll move to questions.
Thank you. Thank you for a great presentation. Questions, please, council? Crystal?
So it's just in regards to the $50. So on page 2, it says $50 per meeting, but on page 2, it says $50 per day. So just clarifying, because I know lots of us sometimes have 2 or 3 board meetings in a day. So just maybe some clarification on that. And then I think of like MPC last week, Tony, what was it, 15-minute meeting? I would think, that's probably not worth the $50, right? So it's just like maybe having some language around that, just in regards to that. And then I want to make sure that like I sit on the Palliser board, so because of the bylaw within that board, we get reimbursed for travel because we have to travel to Hannah. So making sure that we're not double dipping. I would never claim for mileage because I'm already getting paid for that. So just I'm thinking of the future council if those notes could be made. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was actually captured in another policy, and I did have a note on it, but it didn't make this iteration.
Anybody else? Tony. Oh, sorry, Tony. Wrong hand up. Yeah.
You're close. They both start with TO. Yes, first off, congrats to, or a big thank you to the private residents who volunteered to sit on this task force, and they did some heavy lifting in a very, very short time. So thank you for everything that you did bring forward. With respect to the attachment, though, I just had a couple things that I needed clarification on. Under 5.2A, it says the CFO is responsible for reviewing and approving claims, but that's the same as 5.4A, which is a mayor function. Does it belong in both places? And as a result, 13.1 kind of contradicts that. So maybe take a look at that. I think what you wanted to say was what is captured in 13.2. The other one I had was 7.2. So the base honorariums are subject to annual pay increases of the averages of the union. That'll continue to be effective January 1 of each year.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so maybe just to include that for clarity there. 9.1, just a typo there after policy. It says and I think it's as. And then it refers to section 5, but section 5 talks about responsibilities. So I'm not sure it's the right section number there. If you might want to check that. 10.1, it talks to the annual allowances in Schedule A to be distributed on the first payment of the term of the counselor. Traditionally, that's been January 1, and I'm thinking it should probably stay as January 1 for tax reasons. And then I think there should be an addition for 10.3 where it speaks to the T2200 declaration in the old policy, CO622. That's an important thing there that needs to be issued in conjunction with the T4s.
Thank you. I've made a note of that.
Other than that, I thought it looked good.
Tom?
Thanks so much, Tom. Tony.
Yeah, again, thank you very much to the task force for an incredible amount of work. I know they did an awful lot of research and spent a lot of hours. Do we give them anything, by the way? Do we give them a free lunch? Do we give them a Tim's
We
card?
did, in fact, give them a free lunch. At their final meeting, we brought in lunch and gave a sincere thanks, and we took a picture for posterity's sake as well.
Just thinking of the hours and hours that they put in. So what I do like about this policy, and again, just to reiterate, the idea of council is that this would be now set up for the new incoming council, so that everyone running for office coming up in October, is it? Will have a very good idea of how they would be compensated and can, put that into their decision making. So that was the idea of council, is to delay it to this time so that it would be set up for the new council. I just looking at the $50 per meeting, as Councillor Soretta said, and I'm just wondering if we have a definition of meeting. Like that seemed, I have a gazillion meetings and I don't know what would qualify, what wouldn't, what.
So I think the way we have it set up, Angela can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the way we have it set up is any approved board. So at the organizational meeting, we will set out the appointments for each municipal or regional committee or board. And so any meeting of those committees or boards would be considered a meeting. And so I think the way we originally set it up as well is it was going to be based on like a 4-hour increment. We felt that it was difficult to actually track those amounts, and so we actually moved it to a base amount in a lower amount than we originally wanted, to try and again create a process that was easy to administer but also fair. So again, the way it is would be any appointed board or committee, and then just a flat rate per meeting. I think that's correct, right, Angela? Okay, perfect.
Now, it does also mention kind of meetings with government officials. Does that go into the meeting, or does that go into the per diem, or?
That would be covered by the base honorarium, and maybe that's something we should specify within the policy, is being covered by the base honorarium.
I'm just going to pipe in on that one. So obviously this is going into effect for the future. So I just want to speak from the mayor to the future, whoever that will be, is I think you have to understand, like sometimes I can go to Edmonton and see two or three ministers, or might have to drive up there just for one, or we might have to drive up for a flood meeting. So those do take, I have used them as a per diem, but sometimes those can be pretty extensive. So I just want to make sure you guys understand that, there's got to be some clarification in there, because you can't expect the future mayor to, um, I mean, I usually incorporated a lot of my travel with family things. I didn't always claim things, but you can't expect people to do that. So that needs to be very clear. And I know in the last um, round of this, they allowed for that in some ways. So you might want to check. Um, and then just to expand on the meetings. So what if, so for example, we created the economic task force, we created the rails to trails, we created the downtown revitalized, like we did a lot this last 2 terms. So they weren't actually council appointed meetings. So maybe just have some clarification. So I think if council approves a committee for a member to sit on there, I think that has to be kind of added to that committee list until that meet, like for example, Rails to Trails no longer. So, but if that's happening and we're expecting them to attend, I think just make sure that's somewhere in your notes for.
I neglected to say in the beginning as well that for that $50 per diem for meetings, there is a cap on that of 20 meetings a year. So the maximum budget for that per mayor or councillor is $1,000 in a year as well. But certainly we will ensure that those things are reflected, or at least clearly stated.
Yeah, I think just go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, just as an example, because I sit on the Seniors Foundation and we have a contract with AHS, and I sit on the Standing Committee for Health and we deal with AHS. We have regular meetings with AHS, which are what? I don't know.
Yeah, so I think it just needs to be a decisive, okay, is that part of just the regular, the regular wage, or is that, because we're probably in a unique past couple councils because we've created a lot, and now a lot of those things are starting to, like for example, Rails to Trails is closing off, but the AHS committee, we worked so hard to develop that relationship with AHS, and to have those regular meetings, you hate to see to lose, just I think just kind of maybe just double check how you want to handle that for future. It's not going to affect this council, obviously. So,
Absolutely. Thank you.
Patrick, did you have something?
I think it's probably along the same lines as Tom. I serve on a board, but within that board, you do have regular meetings with, government officials or ARMA or whatever it may be. That just how those are covered. But again, I also want to reiterate thanks for all the work on behalf of administration as well as the committee. So.
Yeah, so perfect. So again, so for the listening public, those who want to, put their name in the hat and run for the future, it's just really clear for them to know. And I like the fact that you do have in there, I did find it, that you have the max 1,000. So that, that helps clarify a lot of things too. And the fact that you can, swap out if somebody does, like I know Tom had, union discussions on the Seniors Foundation. He spent a lot of time in meetings. So, if the mayor future can roll that to another, that's awesome. So I'm glad that you guys got that ability in there, because it's, yeah, so interesting what future councils do, but it needs to have there is some movability in this. All right, anything else? Okay, so yes, please thank the committee. I know we it was a pretty tight deadline, but sometimes those tight deadlines you just get her done. And my only thing is, I think it's going to be a tad bit confusing. I hope I don't offend any counselors, but it's going to be a tad bit confusing trying to do part of it here and then effective here. I just think the whole thing should be effective the new term. Again, I know I'm not speaking for me, but I just think that it's going to be a very and the listening public might think, oh yeah, well now they're, you know, this was, the intent was we did it in the 4th year for the future council. So I respect that the remuneration task force appreciates the work we've done, but at the same time, I think it'd be just cleaner to start this November 1st with the new council. Does anybody, sorry to put you guys on the spot, but yeah, I just think it's a headache we don't really need. Go ahead.
I wasn't expecting a wage, so it doesn't really matter to me. A wage increase, right? No, no wage. No, no, I wasn't
You're
expecting
doing
a
this all
wage
for nothing.
increase. Well, some days, no. Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I'd reiterate that as well. You know, a lot of this stuff is new for the new council coming in. So it, by instituting it now doesn't, wouldn't, we've gone this far without it. So the idea again was to set it up for the new council. So rather than mixing and matching, yeah, I would just let bygones be bygones, and we'll finish out the year on the policy and then just make this effective on their new term, which I think was our original spirit in the whole deal.
Yeah, and I think we made that clear to the remuneration task force as well, that the spirit of the task force was to make recommendations that could be implemented for the next council. I think when they reviewed the amount of work that council did do and their total remuneration, they were passionate about in some way, you know, indicating that they really thought the current council should be remunerated more than they currently were. But I think again that was the original spirit, and so we can make that change to implement it for the new council and the policy. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and then wow, they come up with some really really good things with that, the child care and the training, and yeah, it was very well done. So please send them a thank you. Okay, any other discussion on that? Well, thank you both. Great presentation.
Thank you.
All right, Daryl, are you got an announcement?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So just before we move on to the electrifying electric vehicle discussion, charging discussion, I just wanted to introduce the listening public and everyone to our new assistant CAO, Esther Kiambao, who's joined us today. And Esther comes from the MD of Bonneville, and the role is transitional, where the intent is that Esther will become the CAO later this year upon my retirement. So it was the first time I've said it publicly. That's it. I'm going back now. So sorry. So Esther, if you have any words of wisdom.
Well, you haven't shared all of your words of wisdom with me yet, um, but I do hope that I do have some that I can bring to the town, and I'm very excited to be here. I've been very committed to public service my entire career, whether it was in engineering, nonprofit worlds, or municipalities. So I'm really looking forward to my future here and working with you all. Thank you.
And we welcome you. And Daryl says he's retiring, but he's retiring to solve all the rest of the flood program. So he thinks he's retiring, but he's Hotel California. You can't believe. I, on the other hand, there is an election. Okay. All right, let's move on to 8.2.1, please, Jared.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is a briefing note before Council being presented by Jared Bronstein, Director of Infrastructure Services, in regards to electric vehicle charging stations and an electrifying conversation with the committee today. So currently we have two outdated EV charging stations that are owned and operated by the town. There is one at the BCF, the Badlands Communities Facility, and one on the parking lot across from the plaza. Both of these chargers are considered level 1 first generation chargers. And there is no way of recuperating costs when people connect to these chargers. So council did ask that we look at potential options for that. Within the briefing note, there are, I guess, a couple options for the committee to consider to discuss this evening. The EV charging is going towards DC fast chargers. These chargers provide a little bit more oomph when you're plugging your car in. Instead of the 8 to 10 hour charge time that our current chargers have, these would be down under an hour. That is what the EV community is going towards. Now there is an expense that goes with these charging units. These can range anywhere from $100,000 up to $450,000. So depending on the quality of the charge time, there are many options in between. There are grant funding available, but currently none of those grant programs are open. So they could potentially open within the next couple of years. They could open up next year. It could be 5 years. So this is all provincially and federally regulated grant programs. Should we be successful in a grant application, we could see our costs reduced anywhere between $50,000 and $350,000, again, depending on the type of charging system you want to go with. The 50 kilowatt DC fast charger, which will run you about $50,000, is the lowest of the grade when it comes to EV charging. And then if you go all the way up to a 320 kilowatt. So those are those 15 to 20 minute charge stations. Those are the $450,000 charge stations. We have reached out to some of the private industry in regards to EV charging. Tesla was communicated with. At this time, they are not interested in putting any fast charging equipment in Drumheller. We are considered a secondary service provider or secondary route at this time, so they're looking to concentrate on Trans-Canada Highway and other major corridors within Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan. So I was hoping to have a discussion with the community today in regards to the future potential of EV charging, whether or not EV charging is something the community or the town wants to pursue and what that looks like. So if we do decide to go down the path of continuing to provide EV charging, we would be looking at putting this in the 2026 capital plan. However, if we do decide not to move down this path, I would be looking at a moratorium for the next 5 years. And this would allow us time to then gather more information in regards to EV charging and hopefully be able to engage a third party to come in and set this up for us. Any questions of the committee?
Questions? Tom?
Yeah, I don't quite understand the increase in costs, where it says the charger at the First Street West cost approximately $12,000, and the one at BCF cost approximately $7,500, and now you're saying we're looking at $350,000.
So again, that comes down to technology change, Tom. So those rechargers that were put in charge at about 19.2 kilowatts per hour. Those $450,000 chargers will charge at 320 kilowatts per hour. So the technology is far increased over time. The chargers that are being provided currently is something you would put in your home. So if this was something you'd be charging an EV in your garage, so they allow you to charge overnight. The big ones are there to fast charge. They're to get people in and out within 10-15 minutes. So it's closer to a gas station than it is you're sitting there waiting for your car to charge over time.
And they're hundreds of thousands of dollars more.
They are, yes.
Wow. So I guess my general comment would be, as a tourist destination, and I guess the people who have the grants and don't understand who we are and what we are in Drumheller, that we get, hundreds of thousands of tourists every year. I think this kind of a thing is expected. I mean, if we're going to draw tourists from all over Western Canada and all over the place, I think they would definitely expect to have some kind of EV charging station in a tourist destination. I'm not sure what Banff has, for example. Have we looked at that, or what some of these other tourist places have? I don't know if Sylvan Lake has any. What I'm saying is that tourists come here and then all of a sudden nowhere to charge my vehicle. What's with this?
So there are currently 2 DC fast chargers in the community. Unfortunately, they're at dealerships, so they're away from the downtown core, away from where you would have people actually interacting with the facilities for the town. So Dodge has one and GM has one. So there is the opportunity to charge in the community. However, it's not a most ideal economic location for usage of the downtown core. Getting to other resort communities, Banff is along that Highway 1 corridor. So there is incentive for the larger entities like Tesla to come in and put in their fast charging facilities. We're not there yet. Again, if this is something that the committee wants to put forward, I can do a little bit more research in regards to how other resort communities are doing this. Alberta's not as EV friendly, except for Calgary, Edmonton, as say British Columbia. I'm sorry to say that. BC EV charging is becoming very prominent throughout the entire province. Alberta is very centralized to the major centers.
I guess I would also comment, I would like to see maybe a cost recovery statistic. So we have, if this was the outlay, how much could we expect to make per day, per month, whatever, and how long would that take to recoup that amount of money? I don't know, $350,000. What is a particular charge? You said
Well,
like
it just,
$30
just
or?
interrupt there, Tom. The one contractor in town is charges $30 per hour, so it would take a lot of hours to recover $300,000.
Yeah. And I guess my last comment would be, I don't think we're gonna need these anyways when hydrogen vehicles come along.
Crystal?
Is there a reason why none of the gas stations have put them in? Because that's generally where you're seeing them more, is at gas stations. And how is it just because it's not accessible? We don't have a bylaw in place for it. Like,
I honestly, through the chair, I can't answer that question. I don't know why the gas stations in this area haven't tried to provide that service. I guess it comes with supply and demand. I'm assuming there's little to no demand in this area yet for EV charging. So once EV becomes more prominent, you may see gas stations starting to take on this
well,
service.
and then I think, the museum, there's a good opportunity there that potentially they could install some, right? In my personal opinion, I don't think us as taxpayers should be supplementing the cost for people that choose to travel with EV chargers, unless we're going to total cost recovery immediately, but that's not going to be the case. So
There is on Google Maps, the Esso station in town shows a charger, but it's out of service right now, so.
So I did see if there actually was a physical charger there. There isn't. No, so I don't know if they took it out or. Yeah.
Patrick?
I think I agree with Crystal that, yeah, at this point, this kind of expense without grant help is kind of out of our reach. Curious about the thought of a 5-year moratorium. I mean, if opportunities do come available before that, I don't think we would ignore those. And I guess my one question about the one at the BCF, I think it came later, but it doesn't factor into the LEED certification of the building and making sure that it's, no?
No. It does not.
Tony?
Yeah, I agree. To do this half decent, you'd be requiring an upper end for $450,000 charger, which I don't think the municipality or the taxpayers are in a position to fund such an expense. Nor is it needed. The chargers themselves that are there right now, you'd have to be parked all day there to even get a charge. So as far as their usefulness to a tourist is probably minimal anyways. My question is with the ownership of those machines though, do we hold title on them as they were previously paid for by other recipients? And if we don't hold title, how can we dismantle them and shut them down? And if they're running a 6,000 per year annual cost for electricity times 2, we'd want to be assured that they're ours before we shut them down, right?
As far as I can tell, we have them 100%. They are under the ownership of the town of Drumheller.
They're on our property.
They're on our property. They've been purchased by us with the support.
They were gifts.
Yes.
Both of them were provided as gifts. So ADCO purchased one, donated to the community. The second one was purchased by an individual who donated it, partly because he lived in Edmonton and wanted a charging station when he came to see his father here. But so he paid for it, but they're absolutely ours. So.
Okay, so I'd be looking to shut these down and save some electricity costs. I think as long as there's proper signage warning of the thing anyways. I do see various people plugged in from now and time again, but that's still sucking a lot of power for not really getting any kind of a charge out of it if you're plugged in for an hour or 2 hours max type of thing. And further to that, I see that the feds have today suspended the rebate to consumers on electric vehicles as well. So I would think this grant availability is probably a long ways away before they would open up that again. But so yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I guess my, I mean, I agree with you in BC. Like, for example, like in Invermere, there's the Esso there has Tesla, has 5 of them. So maybe they could take one of them and move it to Drumheller. Um, and then we do have businesses here that are doing it and charging for it. So I feel like we're taking away business from our local businesses. And then I honestly get a lot of heat from locals that they have to pay gas for their vehicles to drive their vehicles around, and yet electrical asked me to, the rest of us residents are paying for the electrical. So I'm in support of supporting the businesses that have it. If obviously you've spoken with them, maybe we can just have a bit more communication with them as to how, we recommend that this is where they can charge and make sure that they're good with that. But I don't think that our residents should be bearing the cost unless, we're not going to start paying for everybody's gas, so we shouldn't start paying for their charging their vehicles. So that's my opinion on that. So any other comments? All right, give you enough direction.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I will be coming back with a request for decision at a later date in February.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, that's it for today's. We've got a closed session we have to deal with. So council, can I get a motion, please? Crystal?
I move that council close the meeting to the public to discuss third-party business and local public body confidences as per FOIP 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third party, FOIP 23, local public body confidences, and FOIP 24, advice from officials.
Seconder, please. Tom, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with us, and we will see you again next week. Have a great week and take care. And be